Welcome to the Lead Generation Podcast, where innovative entrepreneurs share their stories and secrets to success. It's time to take your digital marketing to the next level with your host, Bob Sparkins.
Today on The Lead Generation, we're talking mindset, motivations, and money with Rachel Luna. Rachel is the host of the upcoming Confidence Activated Business Conference, as well as the host of the Permission to Offend podcast. She's a powerful coach for women who want to stop letting cultural norms and invisible obstacles get in their way of living amazing lives of impact and wealth. Our conversation digs into Rachel's own history and the lessons she's learned pursuing dreams that others told her were impossible. Be sure to follow along with the transcripts, show notes, and more by visiting this and other episodes at leadpages.com/podcast. And if you've been enjoying this season so far, I invite you to leave a review on your favorite podcasting platform and share this season with the colleagues and clients you know would get a lot out of it. Now, let's get into the conversation with Rachel Luna. Thank you so much, Rachel, for joining me for our episode of The Lead Generation today.
Yay! Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
I'm excited for you to share all of your great wisdom around the experiences that people can have working with a life coach, working on their mindset, working on their confidence. Before we get into that, though, I think it would be helpful for people to get to know you a little bit more. And I like to start out by asking, what kind of transformation do you find that your clients get from working with you?
Well, superficially, the biggest transformation they'll say is in their finances, which I love because I believe that when you make more money, you have more choices and more opportunity to add more value to your community. But aside from that, the thing that they have said the most is that they feel transformed. And I remember when my first couple of clients were telling me that, I was like, transform, what does that mean? Like, that's so vague. And really, the word transform means to change shape. And so it's really changing shape in their business, in their finances, in their relationships. And more than anything, it's in their ability to follow through. And they say the fortune is in the follow through.
That's true. Very true. Well, that's awesome. So let's go back in time a little bit towards the pre-business Rachel. Is there a time in your childhood, a spark maybe, that seems like now that you look back as a bit of a seed towards you being an entrepreneur and a life transformer?
Yes, all of it, I would think. But I have this one very sweet, vivid memory. I was in middle school and I started a company called Beads R Us. And I enlisted two of my cousins to come to my house after school. And I had a little paper bead maker. So you would rip out strips of paper and put it on this machine and roll them up and then put some Mod Podge sealant on it. And that would be your little bead. And so I got that and the string for those friendship bracelets. And I remember talking to my cousins and asking them, how many can you make in an hour? How many can you make in an hour? And I was calculating, and I didn't know that this was called calculating profit margin back then. I just was figuring it out. But I was doing, cost estimates and projections and margins in middle school. And here we are.
That's a lot of fun. Well, and thankfully you're not just doing, handmade crafts now. You do a lot of other things, but you weren't always an entrepreneur, of course. You started out from high school doing a little bit of a different kind of pursuit. So talk to us about what kind of journey did you take initially, and how did you wind up in the Marines?
Yeah, well, initially I was mandated that I was going to go to college over everybody's dead body because, Bob, I know you know my story personally. Both my biological parents had AIDS and my biological mother passed away when I was 3.5. So my godmother, who I call mommy, she raised me, but there was a lot of pressure on her shoulders to make sure that I was successful. Otherwise, she's the one that took this kid and ruined her. And so there was very little space to support my big dreams. And there was a lot of pressure to do the status quo, get a job with a pension, with benefits so that you could be secure. And when I came home, I think I was about 16, 17 years old. No, I was 16. A friend of mine, I was working at Foot Locker, and a friend of mine that was at Foot Locker came into our store one day and she's like, I'm joining the Marine Corps. And I always really admired this young lady. And I think it's so important to really think about the people that have shaped your life and your decisions and why that was. And it's usually because we see either something that we admire in them or some breath of life that they've spoken into us. And in this case, I was just so enamored with this young lady. She was so bold. She was so brave. She just looked fearless to me. And I am very, very small. I'm only 4'11" and a half. Don't take away my half. I'm 4'11" and a half. I'm very petite. And I was quite insecure growing up. So she was like everything I wanted to be. And I couldn't grow taller. There's some things you can't change. But the one thing I could do that would help me be more like Kelly is I could join the Marine Corps. So I went home and I was like, Mommy, I want to join the Marine Corps. And she was like, absolutely not. Hell no. You're going to college. So I went to college. And while I was there, my freshman year, I went to Penn State University. So shout out to all the Nittany Lions in the house. My friend Casey was dating a guy and he's like, I'm a Marine. And he came in and he had his Eagle Globe and Anchor, which is the emblem of the Marine Corps, tattooed. And I was like, how can you be a Marine and still be here? And he says, oh, they have this program called the Reserves. And I thought, that's it. That's the place for me. I can go to college. They'll give me some money for college. I can become a Marine. And so I did that. And I was in the reserves for a couple of years. I graduated college, moved to California, and I worked for Toyota Motor Sales, their national headquarters in the management program, doing exactly what my mom wanted me to do, being a good little girl, not offending anybody, not breaking the rules. And then the nation went to war. So at 22 years old, there I was writing my will, getting shipped off to first Kuwait, then to Iraq. And while I was there, my life changed completely. You just don't come back the same. And I'm thankful that I have all of my mind with me still, but there was PTSD from that experience. And there was a bit of a failure to reintegrate because when I got back from overseas and I went back to my desk job at Toyota, I had this feeling of here we are worrying about spreadsheets and how many cars we're selling, but kids are dying. And so I knew right away I had to go back to the Marine Corps. I had this purpose I needed to fulfill. And so I went back. Fast forward, I spent 10 years end to end in the Marine Corps. And I decided to get out to raise my children, have my kids. And also because I wanted to, I'll say this, there was one duty station that I had in Germany. And during that time, this was around 2006, 2007, I was dealing with the Wounded Warrior Battalion. And I close my eyes as I think about this because I can still see each of these sailors, soldiers, airmen, and Marines coming into our hospital badly burned, limbs missing, genitals missing. I mean, it was that kind of deep experience. And I remember this one kid in particular, he just pulled at my heart and he was talking about what his life was going to be like going back. And he felt hopeless. Like this was all he was meant to do. And now it was over because he was injured. And I remember thinking, I never want anyone to feel like their life is over because one part of their life is shifting. And so, Bob, you asked me in the beginning, what's the biggest transformation? I'm getting emotional when I think about it because I think that the real big transformation that I help my clients get is an integration of their identity. And so it presents itself as more money, more confidence, more action taking, but really it's just an alignment and an integration with your identity and the purpose you were meant to execute. And so then I became a life coach and here we are.
Yeah, I want to talk about that in just a moment, but I think what you're calling attention to is this uncovering of a better sense of self for people, right? And as you explored your own identity, I believe, if I remember correctly, you also had the chance to work with a life coach. So talk to us a little bit about what it was like for you, maybe not even knowing that such a profession existed, and then having the experience of working with somebody like that.
Well, I knew the profession existed because several years prior to me hiring a life coach, I had seen a TV show where the focus was on life coaches. It was called Starting Over. And I thought, oh, what a cool job. They just get to sit there and tell people what to do and give them advice. I could do that. But at the time, I was like 21, 22. And I remember thinking, like, nobody's going to hire a 22-year-old, right? Well, fast forward, now I'm 27, 26, 27 years old. And my life is a mess. My on again, off again boyfriend at the time turned out to be happily married. I was overweight. The Marine Corps was putting the pressure on me to lose weight. And there was a lot. And I was $40,000 in debt. Okay. And now I think $40,000, man, you can get out of that debt in no time. But at that moment in my life, you might as well have been $4 million of debt is what it felt like. So I thought to myself, maybe if I hire a life coach like I saw on TV, they can help me get my life together and I don't keep making these same mistakes and being with these jackass guys that, whatever. So I hired the life coach and she hears my story and she says, "You would be a great life coach." And I said, "Are you crazy? My life is a hot mess. I have no business life coaching anybody." And she said, "Well, yeah, it's a mess now, but once you overcome, people are going to want to know how you did it. And your story is just one of overcoming, because I had a lot of adversity, disordered eating, alcohol. I was sexually abused. I had all these dramas in my life, and yet I was like the Energizer Bunny, like I was still going. And so I said, well, listen, let's just focus on me first, and maybe then I'll go and help somebody else." And Bob, to this day, I really believe that we must be the first partakers of our offering. And I heard that from a woman named Dr. Faith Wakoma. So we always want to give credit to the people that give us those defining quotes that change our lives. But so she said, you must be the first partaker of your own offering. And I think that that's really important. I love Leadpages. You and I have talked at length how much I love Leadpages, right? And I am always happy to talk about Leadpages, but I could never have spoken about the impact and how it helped me in my business if I first wasn't using it and enjoying it, right? I could never be as great of a life coach as I am if I first didn't have a life coach and I didn't understand what it's like to be in that hot seat, because it gets hot when you are with a competent life coach who understands that life coaching is not what I thought it was, giving advice and telling people what to do, but rather a transformational coach who has your best interest at heart, who actually does not want you to become codependent on them. They will give you very few answers and bombard you with questions, sometimes to the client's frustration, right? Have you ever experienced that, Bob? You know what I'm talking about?
Dude, I'm married to an executive life coach, so I am well aware of exactly what you speak of.
And it's so important, because when you are curious, you then teach the client how to ask themselves better questions. And curiosity is the key to our clarity. It will unlock clarity. And so that's where, once I got it together, within 18 months, Bob, I lost all the weight that the Marine Corps was telling me I needed to lose and then some. And even after childbirth, I've never gained it back. It was a total mindset shift. Okay. It was a total mindset shift. And I think somebody might be listening like, well, you're small and that's easy. No, I was overweight for a long time and I'm only 4'11". So listen, I understood. But once you have that transformation, everything changes. I got out of the $40,000 of debt within 18 months and I saved $20,000 in cash. Okay. I met and married my husband. We had our child. It just kind of snowballed into everything I ever wanted. And everything I ever wanted came because I became the woman who really believed and knew she was worthy of having everything that she ever wanted. And now I help people do the same.
Yeah, that's remarkable. And I think it's worth mentioning just for a moment or exploring what misconceptions people may have. You've already touched on a couple of them, but let's dig a little deeper. When people think about working with a life coach, I know there might be people who are listening are already life coaches or have been working with this, but for somebody who's brand new to that concept, what may be a misconception that people may have? And I ask that in part because you watched a show about life coaches. There's a couple more on Netflix. Some are good, some are actually pretty bad when it comes to what that career field is like. And so let's talk about it in comparison to like therapy or
Yes.
other types of modalities of people, trying to improve their lives. Where do you
Hmm.
stand on what life coaching is all about?
Well, one of the things that I think is an issue in the life coaching industry is that it's not regulated. And because it's not regulated, anybody can wake up tomorrow and say, I'm a life coach, which no shade, do you, boo, right? Because if you really think about, well, who determines what certification even means and by which are the standards? And yes, we have the International Coach Federation, but someone could say, well, they who anointed and appointed them, right? So I think for me, where I stand is really making sure that we are towing the lines of ethics, managing the lines of ethics, because if you're not careful, if you're not ethical, and sometimes people are unintentionally unethical, you could end up re traumatizing your clients, right? So, for a life coach, it's very important that you are not digging around in someone's past. We can glance at the past, right? So, a question I might ask is, what is it that you think I need to know about you in order for me to help you get the best results out of our coaching experience? Because then they will tell me their backstory and I'll hear it and I'll take notes. But I'm not going to try to go and resolve that backstory. I'm going to say, okay, great. I understand. I have a good picture of everything that makes you you up until this point. Where do we want to go next? And so it's very important that even when the client wants to sit back in their story of yesteryear, I'm going to say something that I know is going to sound a little off putting, but just go with me for a second. We can all reach and pull some example in our life of victimization, right? Someone cut me off in traffic. I'm the victim of road rage. Someone, slapped me across the face. I'm a victim of whatever. But the thing is that just because you were victimized, you do not have to sit in victimhood and you do not have to hold on to the victim story. So, what I find is that clients will sometimes want to go back to that. And I think that the most effective life coaches will acknowledge the pain, have a deep sense of empathy and compassion for your client in the moment, and then gently guide them forward. And this is the last thing I'll say about that, is making sure that you are brave enough and courageous enough to say to your client, this is a great question for you to explore with your therapist. Are you in therapy? Let's get you set up with therapy. And being willing to turn away the money, right? Because not every client, not all money is good money. And so if it's between your client paying for a therapist and your client paying you, and you know your client needs therapy, take the pay cut, let them get healed, and then let them come back to you.
Yeah, I think that's super critical. Most people who get into this field, they want to be in service of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to be able to acknowledge when you might be out of your league on those things. But for those that are thinking about getting a life coach, or they're just thinking about transforming their life or waking up to what's possible for themselves, you deal a lot with mindset, specifically around money, around
Mm-hmm.
confidence, and imposter syndrome, like all this kind of fun stuff. So let's take maybe one of those types of topics. What would you
Mm-hmm.
say is a good entry point for people to start to wake up and pay attention to what's possible for themselves?
Mm. Well, I like to lead with money because it's something that everyone needs, right? You can't live a day without a dollar. Otherwise, you can be SOL. So the first entry point I like to say is, well, just what do you think about money in general? You hear me talking about it. What is your visceral reaction? What does it feel like in your body? So one of the things that we haven't touched on is that I'm a certified neuroscience coach, and I'm very, very fascinated with the brain and the mind and how they work together and why those things inform our experiences. So, if we take a moment to really think about the money, what comes up in your body? What sensation arises when I ask you to tell me, talk about money? Do you get excited? Do you feel a pit in your stomach? Does your throat close up? Do you immediately go to worry, or do you go to a place of excitement? We always want to have a litmus test, right? Where's our baseline? Then from there, we start tracing back. Remember, we're going to glance at the past. So we'll throw back and say, When was the first time I experienced this particular feeling around money? What's the story there? And then I always tell people that you are going to test the facts, right? You're going to validate or disprove the story. So, for example, my husband grew up in Mexico, dirt road streets, but he would cross the border and go to school to this fancy private school. So he grew up seeing a lot of wealth in school and poverty at home. His whole, for years and years and years, rich people are greedy, rich people are bad, all people that have money are stuck up. They think they're all this. Like, his thoughts around people with money is atrocious, right? My thoughts around people with money is like, great, the more money they have, the more they can help. And yes, I know that there's greedy people, but there are some people doing really cool things with money. And if we get some more, we can be those people too, right? So imagine what my household is like. Always that yin and yang, that dichotomy. So over the years, I've just challenged him, but is that true? And can you find evidence to the contrary of what your belief is? Because if you can start to see a different picture, then you can start to have a different relationship, and then you can start taking different actions. So that would be the entry point, is validate or disprove your stories around money.
We always hear that content is king, but how are you supposed to create a content plan while you're busy running your business? Don't worry, we've got you covered. Download our free content marketing calendar and get loads of content and promotional ideas for every month of the year. Use our suggestions to create fresh content and add your own ideas to create a winning promotional plan. Go to leadpages.com/calendar to grab this free resource. That's leadpages.com/calendar. Now, let's get to the second half of this episode. So a lot of the people listening are entrepreneurial, obviously, right? They're part of the lead generation, and maybe they have been nodding in agreement with what you've just been saying to them. For those that maybe it hasn't quite hit the nail on the head yet, I imagine that there is a bit of a symptom of a bad relationship with money when it comes to entrepreneurs. What would a symptom be like where you could say, if this is something that you're dealing with in your business, it's likely a money mindset issue?
Yes. If you really truly believe that you're showing up and you're doing all the things and you're not making money, I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's not your strategy. It's not your landing page. It's you. You have a block. It's either one of two things, right? Well, it could be many things, but predominantly it's either a money belief or a lack of self-worth belief. And that second one is really hard for people to admit to, because none of us want to admit that we have low self-esteem. None of us want to admit that we think less than of ourselves, because if we were to ever admit that, then all our credibility goes out the window, right? If I, as the strong leader, come to you and say, Bob, oh my gosh, I feel so defeated, I feel weak today, then who's going to follow me into battle if I feel weak, right? But the reality is that even the leaders that are head of state, that they get tired too. And so we have to stop expecting ourselves to be superhuman all the time. If we could lean into our humanity and just accept, like, I am a confident person in general, but I don't feel confident around sales. I believe in myself in general, but I'm doubting my ability to convert, or I'm doubting my ability to add value. I'm doubting my ability to help every single person get a result. And that is a really big one, Bob. I don't know if you've experienced this, but I see a lot of entrepreneurs make this mistake. It's like, well, I don't know if it's going to work for every single person, so I can't sell it. I'm going to tell you right now, it's not going to work for every single person. Nothing works universally for everyone. So if you can just rid yourself of that thought, then maybe you can start showing up in a different way. So that's one of the symptoms. Another symptom that I see of people who are having money issues is they are afraid to send out the invoices. I had a client one time and I was like, I wanted to hire her for something. And I said, okay, send me the invoice. And 3 or 4 days went by and I was like, where's the invoice? She's like, oh, I'm sorry. I said, how many other invoices have you not sent out this week? I want you to tell me how much money in invoices you have sitting on your desk. Bob, it was like $10,000 of invoices that she had not sent out. I said, what are you waiting for? I know I got to do it. I just, my facility, and she made every excuse. She had to tidy up. She's a seamstress. She had to tidy up the facility. She had to go do this, go do that, set up the quick, but what, it was just excuses, excuses, excuses. And when we started to dig, she said, I'm just afraid that they're not going to have the money to pay me and I'm going to put out the invoice, right? What was her real fear? Her real fear wasn't that they didn't have the money to pay her. Her real fear was the rejection, that the perceived rejection from sending out the money, the invoice, asking for the money and not getting it. So you see how these little things are very, very sneaky.
They're so sneaky. And they take the form in the invoicing. They also take the form in raising prices, right? So some people, I know you likely had this experience. My wife certainly did. You go through coach training of some kind, or you learn it on your own, but you never learn about the actual marketing side of your business. So how do you help people think more strategically around charging a price that is profitable, I guess is the best word for it? There's probably other adjectives I could use, but I'll let you run with that question.
Well, the first thing that I like to tell people is to stop charging your worth because you're priceless. Okay. So once we abandon the idea of like, charge your worth, charge your worth. Nah, baby, I'm priceless. Nobody can afford me. But what I'm charging you for is the value of the transformation. That's the first thing I'm taking into consideration. If you get on a call with me and we spend an hour, and in that hour, I help you revamp your offer, or I help you come up with $1 million idea, would that be worth $1,000? I think so, right? Because yes, you spent $1,000 for 1 hour, but in that hour, you learned a skill set. You had a breakthrough that will generate thousands and thousands or millions of dollars over the lifetime of your application of that information. So that's the first thing that you take into consideration, the value of the transformation. And then the second thing is I look at the value of the brand and then the marketplace. So really leaning into your own intuition. You know me, Bob, I'm a praying woman. So I'll throw out a number, then I might pray and journal like, does this feel good? I also look at margin. Remember, we spoke about that at the very beginning with my little bead machine. I know exactly how much money it costs to run my business. Now, if I'm offering this program, what am I going to deliver in this program and how much is it going to cost me to deliver? Let me give you a perfect example. Bob, you're coming to my event, Confidence Activated, which we're so excited about. Shout out to Leadpages. And one of the things that we typically offer is a mastermind after that event. Well, we might charge X amount of dollars, but we deliver a retreat. We deliver gifts. There are these little, well, not little, because a retreat is a big expense, right? But there are these deliverables that will eat into profit. The mistake I made the very first year that I pitched a mastermind, not at my event, just in general, was I didn't take the time to do this cost analysis. And I priced it really low because I wanted people to come and I just wanted to help people. And it's just like, just come, we'll work it out. And I lost my shirt on that weekend getaway because I didn't take into consideration the venue, the food, the transportation, the staff. So you want to look at how much does that one offer cost you to operate? And then there's a sweet spot number there somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, that's great. I think we could talk about pricing strategy on its own probably for a whole nother episode, but it's an important one to understand your relationship to money and in the marketplace.
Oh,
and the
wait. I'm
transformation
sorry.
of the
I got
side.
to say one more thing about this. Because this is where the mindset comes into play. There's a baseline minimum, right? The line of resentment. Do not charge below the line of resentment. So let's say you're thinking of charging for something and the widget is, if you delivered the widget for $100, you'd be pissed off. You'd feel like they were robbing from you. So you already know the widget has to be more than $100. But let's say I said, well, Bob, why don't you sell your widget for $10,000? And you're like, $10,000? And your chest gets tight and the throat closes up and you feel like, oh my gosh, they're not going to find the value. That's too high. So I always say there's got to be a line between resentment and resistance. Okay. So that in between is the sweet spot. If you love the price, if you feel a little bit excited, you'll be able to sell it.
That's awesome. Really good advice. Glad we had a second chance to expand on that a little bit further. So you just mentioned a moment ago your event, Confidence Activated. So I want to talk about that, and we'll talk about the details in a minute. But I want to go to the confidence thing, because in my experience, running events, attending events, speaking at events, etc., one of the confidence issues I've run into is people who come to those types of events and they feel like a novice in some area that the event is trying to help them to grow into. And they leave in the back of the room when they enter their expertise as whatever they're really amazing at. And so they come across in the room somebody completely new to everything, right? So do you have any tips for people to walk into an event of any kind, whether it's in Orlando for Confidence Activated or any other event or even a networking event? How can somebody wear the mantle of confidence authentically while also seeking guidance and help in areas that they might not be strong in?
That's a great question. We just spoke about this yesterday in one of my coaching calls. So the first thing is, do you know what your gift is? Right? My gift is asking questions. But many years ago, Bob, I would not have walked into any kind of room thinking, my gift is asking questions, right? I remember going in knowing that that was my gift, but feeling like it wasn't good enough. Feeling like my gift wasn't going to help them make money. And if it couldn't help them make money, then they didn't want anything to do with me because these are business conferences. But over the years, getting in the room, talking to people, and then doing what I do best, which is run my mouth and ask a lot of questions, people were starting to get the breakthrough from my curiosity. And so now I go into the room and the first thing I say is, I ask you the questions that you haven't had the courage to answer yourself. Right? Because it's not even the courage to ask, it's the courage to answer. So go into the room knowing what your gift is. If you're a seamstress, lead with that. If you are a bookkeeper, lead with that. If you are a Facebook ads manager, lead with that. Whatever it is that is your gift. If you make a mean apple pie, lead with that. Because think about that, Bob. I meet you at an event and I say, hey, I'm Rachel Luna. You know something, Bob? Do you like apple pie? You'll be like, apple pie, whatever. I make the best apple pie. Now it's like, you do? It's such a random, odd thing to even talk about, right? But now we're talking and now we have rapport. Versus if I come in and I say, oh yeah, I'm a coach. And I just leave it at that. There's a majillion coaches out there. No, I'm an architect. I'm an archaeologist, right? Like I'm going to dig into the depths of your soul and I'm going to ask you the most uncomfortable questions and you will never be the same, right? And I'm either going to scare you and repel you or I'm going to draw you in. Do not be afraid to repel people in the room or online. In fact, that's almost my goal always. And I don't mind when people are, I get a lot of disclaimers from my friends. Hey, you're on speakerphone today. Okay, I'll be careful. I'm going to say whatever I have to say. Some people are not going to like it, but you have to be willing to give yourself permission to offend. If you go in with the attitude that it's okay if I offend someone in support of my truth, my values, my beliefs, my gifts, you will always win.
Yeah. And of course, you have a fantastic podcast around that I would encourage people to listen to. Before we wrap up and before you might jump over to listen to more of Rachel's wisdom on her podcast, I do want to spend a minute talking about Confidence Activated, an event coming up very soon. If you're listening to this in the fall of 2022, if not a little bit later, maybe there's another event down the road. But for those listening in real time here, talk to us a little bit about what they can get if they join us in Orlando in the middle of October.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Breakthroughs, miracles, milestones, manifestations, and money. So our theme this year is permission to be wealthy. And we didn't get to really talk about this, but I am a breast cancer survivor. I was diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer in 2019, just days after the very first Confidence Activated ever. And one of the greatest gifts that I was able to give myself was the gift of healthcare, the healthcare and the treatment plan that I wanted, which was not covered by my insurance. But because I had the finances, I was able to write this $30,000 check. By the way, I had never written a check that big in one lump sum, Bob, and knowing that it was going to come right out of my bank account. I'm from New York City. I grew up in the Bronx in an apartment where my bedroom was the dining room. Okay. So where I come from and where I am now, very, very different. What I took from that experience, besides my health, was the value of wealth, wealth in your health, wealth in your finances, wealth in your relationships, wealth in community. So when you come to Confidence Activated, we're going to take a holistic approach. Holistic is just really looking at every facet of your life. And I am bringing some world-renowned speakers to the stage. Women like Patrice Washington, America's Money Maven, Lindsay Schwartz, who is a powerhouse connector. She's going to teach us how to create commerce through community, whether your community is a micro community or it's large and you have hundreds of thousands. She will show you how to leverage it so that it can be a profitable community, but also purposeful. Because for me, I value people before I value profit. And I value profit a lot. So that should tell you something about our experience. So I would say come if you want to be connected with people who really want and do celebrate others for wanting more, right? We celebrate you, not shun you for wanting more. We help you get more because we believe that when good people have more money, they do good things with it. So come do good
I love
things with
that.
us.
And of course, I'm excited to be there as well, representing Leadpages and joining your crew. One of the things I love about your event, I haven't been to it yet, so jury's still out till I get there. But from talking to you and knowing you for the past while that I do, I love that you're designing this event as a little bit on the smaller side. It's very intimate, right?
Yes.
It's not like one of those business conferences where there's thousands of people where you can be hidden and you can leave the room and nobody notices. You have an impact walking into this room and you get that impact received reciprocally when you're in a setting like that. So that's one of the reasons why I love these types of events, particularly because I do get to work with people at a closer level. And I imagine that's part of your intentionality too, so that everybody walks out of the door having that experience of being part of that community.
We really believe in everyone should be seen and heard. You may not always be understood, but I always say stop seeking to be understood. Seek to understand before you seek to be understood. We may not always understand each other, but we will see each other, we will hear each other, and we will continue to look for those connective pieces that unite us as human beings. And that is what I love. So whether you're just starting out in business or you've been in business for a decade like I have been, whatever your belief is, I don't care. I'm a God girl, but you could be a whoever. For us, it's really about, do you have a good heart? Do you love people? Do you love profitability? Because you got to love both. You got to or maybe you don't love it yet. Maybe you're afraid and you want to start loving it because you know that if you could just get over that mindset hump, man, the purpose, the acceleration, the impact, and the financial blessings would just be a complete game changer for you and everyone attached to you.
I love it. And I do think that through experiences like Confidence Activated, you unlock and unleash something for yourself it's already there, right? It's already there. It just needs to be uncovered and peeled away with whatever's been blocking you. So I'm excited about that event. I'm excited to be able to see you in person and work with your audience, etc. Thank you so much, Rachel, for joining me for this week's session. I can't wait to see you in a few weeks and get to learn from you and the great speakers that you brought together. We'll have the link to confidenceactivated.com in the show notes, but of course you can go directly there if you like. Last thought for you, Rachel. What is a mantra or thought that you love to turn to when maybe times do get a little bit of a tough struggle?
Make a decision and make it work. Make a decision and make it work. You don't know what's going to happen, so you just got to go and keep moving ahead. If you sit back for too long in that dark hole, it's a wrap. So make a decision and make it work. Keep going.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rachel, for being with us on this episode.
Thank you, Bob.
That's a wrap for this episode of the Lead Generation Podcast from Leadpages. Take a moment now to subscribe to the show so you don't miss a single episode. Then head over to leadpages.com/podcast for show notes, bonus resources, and more ways to elevate your business. Thanks for listening.